Hi, my name is Dan Laustsen. I'm a cinematographer on Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, and we are listening to the Cinematography broadcast.
The following podcast contains explicit language. You're listening to the Cinematography podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image and the people who make it happen. Coming to you from the world headquarters of Hot Rod Cameras in Hollywood, California, are your hosts, Ben Rock and Ilya Friedman.
Hey, Ilya. How the heck are you?
Hey, Ben. I'm doing all right. How about you?
It's the highlight of my week. I get to talk to you, so couldn't be better. I wanted to brandish something. So a few weeks ago I talked about Nomad Sculpt on the show, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm an idiot, but I figured out how to sculpt kind of. I always doodle like screaming horrible bald men with asymmetrical faces, and I figured out how to sculpt one, and then I figured out how to 3D print him.
Whoa! Look at that. Pretty awesome. So, well done.
Yeah. I have no earthly idea what the hell I'm going to do with this hobby of mine, but maybe I'll just make a bunch of screaming bald asymmetrical pained men figurines and stack them around my house. So Ilya, who is on the show today?
Dan Laustsen, returning champion. He, of course, has the new Frankenstein movie currently in theaters and also on Netflix.
I want to continue to call bullshit on the box office numbers I keep hearing about Frankenstein, because it still says like $129,000. And I'm like, the theater I saw it at alone probably made that much money with Frankenstein.
For sure. It was sold out all over Portland. Everywhere it was playing, show after show sold out. I got very lucky to get one of the last seats in mine.
And a friend of mine in Chicago gave me the same story. It's like, sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm in a bubble here in LA, but a Frankenstein movie by Guillermo del Toro coming out right before Halloween, maybe it's not going to make $200 million theatrically opening weekend, but I'm just like, it's not a box office bomb. I think that Netflix has an agenda to show that box office is meaningless to them. And so they're downplaying it. And I maintain this is a freaking amazing movie that if you're hearing the sound of my voice, that means that there is a chance it's still playing in a theater near you, and it is worth seeing in the theater and also worth seeing on Netflix. I mean, come on. I'm not anti-Netflix here. I just wish that I cannot believe that this movie is tanking theatrically. Guillermo del Toro, Oscar Isaac, Frankenstein. I mean, you got basically 3 brand names right there that would make most people go see this movie. Mia Goth. Holy shit. Go see this movie.
One of the nicest large theaters in Los Angeles is at Netflix too. It's like, when you're at Netflix, you get to see things on a really, really big screen. They're not making you watch it on your phone. They're not making you watch
that. I actually thought that was interesting because yes, I recently went to a press screening at Netflix and I'm like, oh, they're not bringing me into a fake living room and having me sit and watch it on a television. They're bringing us into a traditional screening room to watch it like we were watching a movie in a screening room. Look, I'm all for Netflix. I love Netflix, watch lots of stuff on Netflix, but I feel like Ted Sarandos and all the folks over there might reconsider their position on theatrical, because I think theatrical does matter. And, when you see Netflix take K-pop Demon Hunter and stick it in theaters for a weekend as a stunt and make $20 million, you're like, yeah, you see, people want a communal experience. And it's different than watching it at home. No matter how big your TV is, no matter how good your sound system is at home, it's a better experience. And a movie like Frankenstein deserves it. And, look, I know Guillermo del Toro is a big boy. He got into what he agreed to this, I'm sure, going in, and he knew what he was getting, which was a no notes get to make your Frankenstein movie for a purported $120 million budget experience. That is worth it. But I just think it's value for the audience. This is not what we're here to talk about.
No, but I think that it's fine that we jumped on this soapbox. I mean, look, things coexist. I mean, there was a bunch of people who prophesizing the downfall of movies when TV came around, and that didn't happen. There has been all kinds of things to distract you from whatever the movies might be at a time, but the movies persist, and they persist because people like this experience. And I don't think that no matter how compelling something is going to be on a TV or a small screen, it kills the movies. The movies might die for other reasons, but it's not going to be because just there's other options. People love going to the movies.
If I've learned nothing since COVID, it's that like when properly incentivized, people will go to the theater to see something that they are excited to see. And, you know, like we saw people kind of burn out on comic book movies and the Marvel stuff not doing as well as it used to do. Whatever, but then you'll see something like Sinners or Weapons that just kicks ass at the box office, and it's like, hey, we're giving somebody a unique experience. And I feel like Frankenstein is definitely that. So again, I don't want to be on a soapbox. I don't want to offend Netflix. I think Netflix is awesome. I just think that I want to live in a world where I can watch something in a movie theater and then see it on Netflix, especially something of this importance and magnitude, in my opinion.
And now, Close Focus.
We are here for a close focus about something that is timely and something that, frankly, we don't have to spend a huge amount of time on, but
and designed for the small screen.
And designed for the small screen. Although, you know, it's about Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has been making commercials in the theater and on television.
For those of you who've never heard of Coca-Cola, they make delicious beverages, including what I would consider to be the champagne of diet sodas, Coke Zero.
Well, Coke this year has decided to do AI commercials again. They didn't exactly double down. Last year they did 3.
Well, here's the thing, man. Yeah. Okay, so it's like we just had Halloween. Yeah. Halloween was like a week or so ago. And so now that Halloween is over, we're in full-blown free fall into Christmas town. And now apparently it is a Christmas tradition that Coca-Cola is going to make an AI commercial for Coca-Cola, because last year honestly, I think it got a lot of press because they did it, even though a lot of that press was negative. It's like, there's no bad press. Also, is an AI commercial going to make me go, oh, I'm not going to drink Coke Zero? No, I'm not switching to Pepsi Zero. Coke Zero is awesome. So, you know, I don't even understand why Coke has to advertise, but whatever. So last year they made an AI commercial using all AI tools. And so now it's a Christmas tradition. We're going to do it every year. So this year they made yet another animated CGI, but really AI commercial. You want to talk about it?
Sure. So it's got all sort of the hallmarky sort of things of a Coke commercial. It's got smiling animals, and this is going back from the time when they used to hand animate, you know, polar bears and things like that. It's got Coca-Cola delivery trucks, you know, moving through snowy places.
It implies that seals swimming in like a river give a shit about what season it is, or that Coca-Cola is showing up, because I don't really know any seals, but I imagine they don't drink very much Coke at all.
So they did an international version. They did a US version of this commercial, and you guys can go watch it. It's on, YouTube and the interwebs. And there's people who are comparing last year's commercials. And what's interesting, though, is like LinkedIn, which I should say, I don't think it's just my feed, but there are so many people out there who are so excited about AI, how AI is going to revolutionize business, and how all these wannabe LinkedIn influencers posting about like, oh, you know, how incredible AI is, and boy, you should be jumping on this. So
doesn't sound like a bubble at all, man. This sounds pretty legit. We should get into that.
Anyway, my point though is this. Yes, this year's Coke commercial looks better than last year's Coke commercial. Like, objectively, it just looks better.
Sure.
It is the
no doubt.
The algorithms, the rendering, they created a better looking Coke commercial. Do I feel more empathy for Coke? Do I feel like I care more about Coke? Am I going to go buy more Coke because this commercial looks better than last year? Objectively, no. I'm not going to. I mean, I don't think there's other people out there too who are going to be like, oh, you know what? Because they did this commercial, I'm not going to drink Coke. I think
it has you and me talking about it, and honestly, it has a ton of people on the internet yakking about it. And so it's going to make a lot of people watch the commercial, and then later today they're going to be like, damn it, I'm thirsty, and then they're going to go get a Coke. But they were going to do that anyway.
Yes, I think that this is not a perfect example of something that is actually going to influence people one way or another to use AI for any sort of commercial or advertising. Mm-hmm. This commercial is fine. Is it great? It's neither last year's nor this year's is great. Neither one of them. It is what it is. And
if I saw this, if you sent this back in time 5 years ago, I would be like, oh, it's a CGI animated Coke commercial. And I wouldn't think about it any more than I thought about the polar bears in the 1990s.
And as far as Coke's concerned, though, that's probably great, because they can probably draw a line between how many Cokes they sold and their polar bears. So I think that anyone trying to copy Coke and trying to go forward and go like, they did it, so I should do it too. Be warned, because this does not work for everyone.
I am seeing, especially like on YouTube, in my YouTube feed, I'm seeing expensive looking, although I'm sure they weren't that expensive, fully AI commercials left and right. And there's one that keeps popping up in my feed that's for like a pest control company, and it's shot like The Evil Dead. And it's got all these cool shots and stuff like that. And I'm like, like I would look at that and go like, and to me, if I were as a filmmaker, I would look at that and go, oh, that's cool. That's like really detailed previs, and let's go shoot that. But like,
would you want to hire that pest control company though? Because ultimately that's what they want. And I got to say that for most companies and brands out there, if they're making an AI commercial like that, I would probably want to work with them less. I probably want to have less to do with them, if I'm being honest.
If I'm being honest, I don't actually think it influences it's making me aware that they exist. Although even as I'm sitting here, I couldn't tell you who they are. And I've seen this commercial 50 times.
Exactly my point.
And it's because every time this commercial comes up, I'm like, I find myself looking at it and being like, holy crap, this is AI. Like that's really the only thought going through my head. Like, oh my God, like they make these cockroaches look like giant monsters and stuff. And, I actually think it's the kind of thing that nobody would have made this commercial as a real commercial. And that's the problem, is it's not a real commercial. It's an AI commercial. But like once it's done, it's a 30-second piece of media that they're buying ad time for on YouTube or wherever and serving it straight up. And it does make me kind of go like, I've only recently gotten used to the fact that like a lot of commercials, especially online, are just some random influencer that I've never heard of talking about some game that I'm not going to play.
Yeah.
But like these people are making money. And I think like from an advertising agency standpoint, they've been like, oh, we're like when they went the influencer route, it's like, okay, well, we can cut the whole crew out of this. It's just some person with their phone. It's just an influencer. And if you're doing beauty or if you're doing whatever, you can just have an influencer up there yakking about whatever it is. They're just filming it themselves. So we got it down to one. And now
we can get it down to zero. Get it down to the editor, the person who's sitting there. You can push in a couple of prompts and we're done.
I mean, I think it's an agency intern who's probably sitting there prompting for like 3 straight weeks to get 5 usable shots. And prompting is its own form of madness, I think. Because it's like,
it's true, because you don't know what you're going to get. You really don't.
Yeah. Directing actors, I love working with actors. It's one of my favorite things. But directing actors, sometimes it's like you give a straight, clear, concise direction, and then what you get back isn't what you wanted. And that's normal. And prompting AI is like that on steroids, and the steroids are on crack, and the crack is on LSD. Like you make what is the most clear, concise prompt you could ever write, that it directly describes exactly what you want. And then you get, like, I was one time doing this thing where I was doing projection design for a play, and I had a still image, and it was a still image of a tree in a lake. I was just trying to get pond ripples, and the AI was incapable of not adding camera movement.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like literally, no matter how I wrote lockdown tripod shot with no movement, no matter how I prompted it, it kept doing a zoom in or a handheld wobble. And it's like after about 2 hours of that, I'm like, screw you. I'm not bothering. And that was, oh crap. I forget the name of it. It was one of the big ones. Actually, I'm not going to say its name. Yeah. I don't want to, I don't need to feed it oxygen.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So Ben, why don't we get to the interview with Dan Laustsen?
Merry Christmas, Ilya.
Merry Christmas to you.
The Cinematography Podcast Interview.
Thank you so much for coming back on the show. An amazing job on Frankenstein. It's just an amazing looking film. Kind of captures it. It reminds me a little bit in Guillermo's work of Crimson Peak.
I agree about that. We shot that for many years ago, but I agree about that.
Yeah. Well, because it's got that kind of gothic. It's so gothic. It's so gothic that you cast someone whose last name was Goth. But it's beautiful work. So let's just kind of start at the beginning. So tell me about how Guillermo brought you the project.
First time I heard about that, as I remember, was when we shot Crimson Peak for some years ago, and he said, I have this like Frankenstein movie, I really like to do it. And then, he talked about it, and then So that was the first time I heard about it. Maybe on Mimic, but I don't remember that clearly. But I remember clearly on Crimson Peak. And then, of course, Shape of Water, we talked a little bit more about it, and The Nightmare Alley, a little bit more. And then one day he called me and said, we are going to do Frankenstein. So I read the book, and I was really fascinated about that. And of course, then some months later, I got the screenplay from Guillermo. And for me, there was a lot of difference between the novel or the book and the screenplay. And of course, I should not be surprised about that, because Guillermo is Guillermo, and he's always changing stories, and his look about stories is so dramatic and period correct. So that it was for me like, wow, this is fantastic.
Yeah. So had you read the book before?
I read the book, before, but for many years ago.
Yeah.
And then I read it again, of course, when the movie was coming to life, before I got the screenplay, because I just want to fresh up my memory about what was it actually.
So were there like any like images that came to you as you were reading the book that you were like, I'm going to figure out how to make this happen in the movie? Was it all in the screenplay? Like how much of reading the book did that inform you of what you were going to go do?
Of course, I didn't use the screenplay those days. It's just like, if I remember clearly, there's a lot of things going on the lake in the middle of the night. And of course, when you're reading that as a cinematographer, you think, how are we going to do that?
Yeah.
Because I'm not a big fan of day for night, so I adjust the lights. It's just something like, when you're reading a book, it's like you can write whatever you want because there's no practicality there.
Yeah.
But that's not a part of the movie. But the drama is the same. So it was just, I got some scary moment about how are we going to do that, but that was not in the book, in the screenplay, so that was no problem.
So let's talk about the color palette, because the color palette seems very deliberate and very specific. There are specific uses of like red and green and there's it kind of goes out of its way almost to underline, like Frankenstein's, I know this is wardrobe and not cinematography, but I feel like it redounds to cinematography. Like his gloves are red, like he's got blood on his hands the whole time. Like talk about like the way that you guys developed whatever color palette you developed. Like, what did it mean to you guys?
No, red is with the mother. As you said yourself, red is the blood. So we have red with the mom's dress, and red with the gloves, and red with the coffins, roses around the coffins with the mom. So red is a very strong color palette for the mom. And we always like steel blue. Guillermo and me have been working with that since we did Mimic from like 30 years ago. And every movie we try to get away from that. But we just love that color. We think that color is so powerful comparing to other colors. So we are like big fans of like the steel blue cyan mixing with the orange, amber lights from torches or candles or fireplaces. And of course, when the creature's coming in, it's getting much more pastel, it's getting less colorful. But still, we keep the steel blue and amber a little bit when she's coming in with candles and stuff like that. But the creatures I think the color palette of the creature is more innocent and less powerful in the beginning. And first time we see the creature, we want to feel the creature looking into the sunshine. The first time we see the creature in his bedroom, it's like he's opened the blinders and the sun is coming into his face. And it's like a very romantic moment between father and son. And we try to keep that romantic, warm color palette in the beginning of the movie every time we see the creature.
I'm kind of interested to know, like, how do you choose the right camera to shoot this kind of thing on? And also, like, one thing that I don't know watching it, how much of it was it like a constructed set? How much of it was green screen or whatever, or volume, or, what techniques were you using to achieve the massive scope of the film?
First of all, Guillermo and me and the whole department, head of department, Guillermo likes to do as much as we can in the camera. So we're doing, of course, does some green screens, but very little, all the sets I would say all the set is built, comparing, except those where we are coming on location in Scotland, the big castles and stuff like that. But everything else is built in the States, in Toronto, because we want to do everything for real. The ship is built on a parking lot. The ship is like 300 feet long.
Oh, wow.
And built on a big gimbal, so we can, when the creature is moving, the ship is actually moving. There's no CGI there. Of course, the ocean on the ship is CG because we're not in the North Pole.
Yeah.
We shot a fair amount of stuff on a big lake up in mid-Canada somewhere, because we really want to go as realistic as we can. The castle is a miniature.
A real miniature? Like you guys did a miniature?
Yeah, we did a real miniature. Guillermo and me went to London to shoot a miniature shoot for 2 weeks with another crew.
Oh, cool. Well, like, were you shooting the miniature stuff?
Yeah, we were shooting, Guillermo and me were shooting it together with another team, of course. And then...
That is so cool.
It's very cool. And the whole explosion inside the lab where the batteries are falling down, all that is miniature.
So you blew, it was actual pyro in the miniature?
Yeah, for sure. The castle, when you see the tower exploding, that's a miniature.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And when you're inside the lab, when the big batteries is tilting over and falling down, that's a miniature too.
Amazing.
Of course, there was set cleans up, but there was not like set. We didn't build any CGI. We have a little bit blue screen, but very, very little, because we like to do everything for real. And what we really love is we love large formats camera. We're shooting Alexa 65, and we are using the full sensor, except we're cropping 5% for having space for the visual effects to clean up or stabilize or whatever. And we are shooting with Leica Italia lenses because those lenses are so clean. Because we don't want to have a flare, by the way. If we want to do a lens flare, we're going to do it. We don't want to have a lens that just we cannot control. But the combination between Alexa 65 and the Leica lenses is very, very sharp. And to break that up a little bit, we have a diffusion filter inside the camera. So we don't use filters in front of the lens. We're using filters behind the lens. So if we got a flare, we got a lens flare, not a filter flare. I think it sounds a little bit nerdy, but it's just a big difference.
I just kind of wanted to jump in. What kind of behind the lens filter? Because typically you have to use really, really thin filters at that point. Is it like a stocking or what kind of?
No, it's a filter, special made filters.
Okay, so just a traditional, yeah.
So we have a diffusion filter, black Promaster 8 or a quarter, built together with the ND filters, because I like to shoot the whole movie on the same T-stop. So I'm shooting the whole movie on T4.
Ah, super cool.
I think the combination between the Thalia lenses and the diffusion filter is really is a nice look. And we used, I would say 90% of the whole movie is shot on the 24 millimeter. Thalia.
Really?
That's the most wide angle lens they're making. So, we want to be really wide angle, but because it's a large sensor, the widest lens is a 24. So the focus length is still a 24. So when you're coming into a close-up, it's not distorting a lot. And because we did that a lot, we start on a big wide shot and then pull into a close-up of one of the actors. And because the way we are doing that, all the set is designed together with Guillermo and Tamara, of course, to be sure how we're going to block the scenes, because all our lights is outside the windows. On location or in the studio, we never have any lights inside the sets, because we're using a fair amount of atmosphere, and you want to have the windows like a kind of a GoPro to break the lights up. So that's a big deal for us. Big lights outside the window, far away, to make it a little bit more classic look.
That's really cool. Now that you say it, it makes perfect sense. I just watched the movie last night, and there's a ton of great motivated light between the scenes that are inside the ship interior, inside the castle. It always feels like light's coming from outside. And now to hear you say that, of course.
And it does. All the lights from, even inside the ship, it's coming from outside. When you're
What about in like the dungeon of the castle? Like, you've got sort of like these shafts of light coming from like above from the hole in the ceiling. But really it's so dark and so moody that there isn't some cheating or some bounce or some other stuff inside of there. Wow.
No, because we designed that. We knew the set, of course. We have the drawings and it's 3Ds and discussion, and that set is like off-white, and that's the worst enemy for cinematographers, especially if you're me. I'm not a big fan of white. So we did a lot of tests for that ceiling, actually, because we knew there was going to be, and I knew we was going to shoot very wide angle there. So, and I knew we could not have any lights inside the set because it's smashing the atmosphere, it's smashing the smoke, it's just destroyed everything. So what we did there, we was working a lot with the depth of the ceiling. You know, you have the top of the ceiling and then you have the curve inside it. And we want to do that as low as possible. So what I did there together with my gaffer, we have, in each hole, we have 5 lights coming in. We have a 5K coming straight down, and then we have 4 vortexes coming in like cross lights. So the vortex is like super soft lights to spread it out a little bit, and I can control that. So if I'm shooting one direction, the front lights, we're taking that away, so we only have backlight. And we spent a fair amount of time to test that, how we should construct that ceiling before we did it. And it works really well, I think, because that is like, how are we going to light that? Because again, we're shooting, sometimes we see the whole room. And of course, when she's coming down first time, I have a little bit light on her face, you know, just to open her up a little bit, but very, very little.
Yeah.
And I just think the way to save lights and to put lights on again, it works really well. But there's no lights inside the set, more or less.
It's so gloomy and so wonderful. It's such a great part. And you know, I was so pleased sitting in the audience every time you went down into that basement, because it's such a fantastic look. And you're right, I didn't think about the off-white because it's sort of bathed in like a slightly, you know, a cooler shade of white from the light and stuff. But it's that whole sequence, all the sequences in there, I thought were fantastic. It was really great.
And again, you know, when you have white tiles and they're a little bit shiny, if you put any light in there, you see the reflections. Of course, you can paint that out.
You also have water. You have like reflective, like you have water through there too. It's like this is a
stream of water going down.
This is not an easy light at all. This is like incredibly complicated. So
it is pretty. It looks pretty straightforward, but it is a little bit tricky. And now and then we have some par cans outside the set again through those holes, so we got a little bit glimmering in the lights in the water there as well. But the construction of that ceiling was a big deal, and we you know, when you're shooting, you just have to be fast. So, you know, a lot of preparation, a lot of pre-lights, and a lot of like thinking about how to try to do it right. And I'm happy you liked it, because it was a big challenge for me to do it.
Well, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the way you and Guillermo cover a scene, because there's something I've always noticed in his work, and especially in your work with him, which is that like I feel like there's not a sense of conventional master over kind of coverage, but that every shot feels like it's specifically designed. Sometimes they'll intercut and you'll cut back to them, but it doesn't feel like coverage, if that makes sense. It feels very specifically architected to be edited, maybe more or less one way. How do you go about kind of planning that out? And do you ever cover your ass? Or you know, at this point, you guys have been working together for so long, I don't know that you need to, but I'm just curious.
First of all, blocking is Guillermo. You know, he knows exactly what he wants to do and how he wants to do it. We just talk about what kind of equipment. So the whole movie is shot on a crane. We never shot one single shot that was not on a hot head or a Steadicam.
Wow.
So everything is shot on a remote.
Even in the boat? That looked like a small set. Oh, wow.
The boat, a lot of the stuff at the boat was a dance floor with a G-bomb and a hot head on, and the Steadicam. But the difference between this one actually and Shape of Nightmare Alley was, on Nightmare Alley we used the Alexa LF on the Steadicam. But I didn't like that, so on this one I talked to my James, the Steadicam operator, about shooting actually the whole movie, even the Steadicam, the 65. And the 65 is a big camera. And he managed to do that. That was amazing. And so we used it a lot because it was, you know, Steadicam, when it works, is really a fantastic piece of tool. But the blocking is very much Guillermo, of course. And what we did on this one comparing to what we have done before is the shot here is much longer. You know, we're starting, for example, Mia is coming into his working space first time. We are coming behind her on a 45-foot movie bird. telescope crane, and we're just going behind her, big wide shot, and we are ending on a close-up of him in the end. So the challenge there is to light the master like beautiful, the wide shot beautiful, but even the close-up have to be gorgeous. That's a little bit tricky, but that's when you have the light outside the windows, it's a little bit easier to control it. Of course, we are using a lot of light out there, but Guillermo is not covering the scenes. He's making overs over, but it's not a straight over. It's always like coming from something. The camera's always moving.
Yeah.
We're never ever static. We are booming up or going around. And of course, that's a little bit challenged as a cinematographer because the lights have to be in the right position in the beginning and the end. So it's a lot of dimming up and down lights and stuff like that. But it works pretty well. And he's not a big fan of rehearsals. So we're starting to do a rehearsal, and Guillermo said, let's shoot it. What can go wrong? Yeah, so yes. So what can go wrong? If you don't like it, we just do it again. And then I said, it's not a rehearsal then. No, but let's shoot it.
Larry Fong gave us a bunch of stickers that says, if you shoot the rehearsal, it's not the rehearsal.
That's what I mean. So that is the way it is.
But he rehearses with the cast and gets the blocking down, and it feels so, every frame of it feels so handcrafted.
Everything is super organized and super precise, but the crane is, and that's the same as Steadicam, it's a piece of equipment that's moving around. It's not like we are going from A to B, because Guillermo is talking to the operators and the grips when we are shooting and said, go a little bit down, boom up, boom down, go left and go right. So everybody's like a little bit on the toes. And of course, that's pretty complicated for the focus puller, Doc Lavender, because when you're shooting large format and super wide angle, the focus is super critical. But he did it. He's the best in the world. So that's fantastic.
I'm really excited that you guys took on this project, just because, before I knew that I was going to do this interview, I was doing a little bit of research of just how many times Frankenstein as a character has appeared in movies, and it's incredible and long running, and granted, many of them were a long time ago, but it's like over 400 times. It's like some incredible, it's some huge number. It's really a massive number, and not all of them are very specifically Frankenstein movies. They are movies that have also featured a Frankenstein character of whatnot, but it goes on and on and from all over the world. So it's like the reach of Mary Shelley's book, like, to this day, and how well it connects with audiences and connects with people. Like, it was really interesting. My 17-year-old son, as we left the theater, was saying, like, I think there's a parallel here between the Frankenstein monster and artificial intelligence today, and the fear of AI and the monster coming out of control. And I was like, this story is so timeless. The story works on so many levels. It's like, I guess I'm curious. I know that it doesn't exactly fall into cinematography per se, but what sort of responsibility do you feel that you have when you have something that is cultural icon or mass I'd say worldwide phenomenon, or is every movie exactly the same, or do you feel extra pressure or extra? I mean, look,
pressure to do something different,
to really to bring a new stamp to this.
It's one of the most iconic characters in film history, certainly the Boris Karloff, James Whale Frankenstein, and then you've got the Christopher Lee one, but even like one of the very first adaptations ever made by Thomas Edison's company was an adaptation of Frankenstein. There's a crazy looking monster that was recently resurfaced in a silent film from, like, I forget, it's like 1910 or something.
There's a movie from '65 called Frankenstein Meets the Space Monster. I haven't seen it, but it's
okay.
Yeah, you guys should have remade that. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying, of course, because I think Guillermo was a genius in director, so when he asked me to do Frankenstein, I have of course I want to do that, because I think his approach to everything is so fantastic. And for me, it's a movie about love and forgiveness. It's father and son. It's not a horror at all. For me, it's it's much more beautiful. For me, it's really about father-son relationships and forgiveness, love and forgiveness.
For sure.
And of course, I'm not a part of, how to make a screenplay. I just have we talk about how to shoot it, what should we do, how should we do it. But I was not looking at any of those Frankenstein movies before we shot, because I always like to go into a movie with open eyes and open mind. So I'm not like looking at what somebody else have done. And of course, I've seen some Frankenstein movies in the past, but it's not like I remember them clearly. And I think the way Mike and Guillermo designed the creature this time, or the monster, is so cool, because it's so beautiful, and because Frankenstein is a perfectionist. This guy, he wants to do it as beautiful and perfect as he could do. So it's not a lot of mistakes. There's some mistakes, but it's a very, very beautiful and strong person. That's the reason he looks so fantastic, because Frankenstein did a very nice construction of his child. And I think that's worked so well, because a lot of, when you see the old ones or see pictures, and it's a really mess, the creature. But I think on our movie, it's just beautiful. It's so fantastic. It's so innocent. It looks like a child, I think.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And I mean, like that definitely comes across, in the approach to the character and the performance, which again is, I feel like, straight out of the book. And the Victor Frankenstein character, like I thought it was interesting, with Oscar Isaac and the way that he was approached is, not an entirely detestable person, but not an entirely likable person, but a very multi-dimensional person. And, you said that you're shooting most of this on a 24 lens. Like, what do you, I mean, and I this may be a weird question, but it's like, you've got like a scene between him and Mia Goth, for instance. And, he's kind of dark and brooding, and like she's like the light of life in the same scene, in the same room, in the same light, on the same lens. How do you go about kind of sculpting the different looks around each one of them so that they're in that space, but we're getting such totally different vibes off of both of them?
Of course, I'm trying to light him, but again, because we are coming from so wide shots, so it's hard to control the lights on him, because we are coming. For example, that shot when she's coming in with a butterfly. We are behind her, and we are coming around, and we're ending like at 190 degrees, shooting back. So we don't see the crane, but we see the back of the room. So it's a little bit difficult to control the light on him, because again, he has to be very masculine and, a little bit dangerous.
Yeah.
And she has to be like this innocent and beauty butterfly, actually. And of course, I just try to keep both of them in the same fill of lighting, and just have a little bit less fill light on his close-ups. Or not fill up, because we are not using fill light, but a little bit more negative fill. But we are not changing, because the camera's moving so much, so it's very difficult to change the lights in the scenes, because when you're doing it normally over, it's easy to do close-up of her and change everything for that. But as we talked about earlier, it's not like we're doing a close-up of her. We're going to close-up of her and then coming up to him. So it's a floating way to shoot the movie, and that's what Guillermo really likes, and I love it too, because it is. We are really using the camera as a third dimension to tell the story.
And what do you think that camera is telling us by floating and not settling?
No, I just think it's like a settle. I think when the camera is floating, you are in there with the actors. You're in there with the character. When you have a camera standing out and you're looking at the actors, I think that's a big difference. When you just have a static camera. And there's nothing wrong with that, because people can do whatever they like to do, but we just like to have a camera that's a part of the scene. And I think that is when the camera is moving around the character, you just feel you're part of, you're in there with the actors, I think, in there with the characters, instead of you're standing further away or whatever on a tripod or a dolly and just observe it. So from my point of view, I think when you have a moving camera, it's much more. First of all, it's much more dramatic, but it's much more like you're a part of the scene.
And does shooting on a 24 aid in that, like kind of keeping you? It's not. It's a little wide angle. It doesn't feel fisheye or anything like that.
But that's because the sensor is so big, because it's actually a very wide lens.
Yeah.
But that's because, again, it's a 24. If you shot that on a Super 35, you have to shoot on an 18, and then you have a lot of distortion.
Yeah. But by choosing that, is that like to kind of is it an immersion thing, like to keep like is I think a lot about like the way Roger Deakins shoots a Coen Brothers movie, where it's not over the shoulders, but it's like a wider lens closer up to the actors. Is it up and is the approach something like that?
Yeah, we're just doing our own way to do that, because we are moving the camera as well.
Yeah.
But of course, I think when you're using wide angles, you're close to the character and you see the set behind at the same time. The set and the characters is much more together if comparing to if you have a long lens, and there's nothing again wrong with that, because long lens can be very beautiful.
Yeah.
But if you have a long lens, you just take the character out of the set. But we like to have them in there because the camera is again moving so much. But I just think wide angles, it's like Orson Welles, the classical way to shoot movies. It's very dramatic, and when you're shooting large format, and you can use, for example, the 24, we did all the time. The focus length is nice on the females as well, because it's not super distorting, but it's dramatic.
Yeah,
it's a matter of taste, and we just like that. We have no doubts about this is the right way for us to tell the story.
So you said you shot most of it on the 24, but not all. What would make you throw a different lens on, and what lens would you throw on?
No, we was all the way down there to 24. I think the next one is 30, then you have a 35, and I think there was those three lenses we used all the time. Sometimes you have the feeling about maybe the 24 was a little bit too wide for example, some females close-ups. But we are never making like close-ups. We are not making John Wick close-ups.
Yeah.
It's not like we're not doing that. We're just doing a close-up is like a medium shot. So we're most of the time as a 24. I think it's 90%, maybe more. And then we are going down to up to a 30 or 35.
One of the things that I noticed quite a bit when I was watching this movie is how intentional the visual information was in the frames. There is a tendency, especially when a movie uses a lot of close-ups and a lot of longer focal lengths, that you have a lot of isolation of, here is the subject, here's what you're supposed to be paying attention to. Even though I knew exactly what the subject was, what I was supposed to be looking to in the frame for Frankenstein, I felt like I was given so much wonderful information, even down in the shadows, in the background, in the set, in the texture of the monster's countenance, the texture of the wardrobe, the texture of Oscar Isaac's sweaty, bloody, matted hair. It's like there's so much information around it. It was not like, hey, here we're telling you what to see. Here it sometimes it just felt like it played out to me almost more like a stage. I had all of this information. I'm just curious. I know that when you work with a wider focal length, you move the camera appropriately, you do get a little bit more depth of field than, say, longer lenses. But how conscious was the process of crafting these shots of like, how much information should we give? Should we give all of this texture and environment to the audience?
Yes, we want to do that. We want to make it like our idea was to shoot a period movie, but shoot it very modern. We want to have it like, we want to feel it's not like Barry Lyndon, because we love Barry Lyndon. Barry Lyndon is a masterpiece, but that's a very classic and a little bit like, as you said before, we talked, static camera. This is a tableau. This is a tableau. But we didn't think this should be Frankenstein. We like to, and that is just the way we like to. We did the same on Shape of Water, Crimson Peak, or whatever. The camera is a part of the storytelling, and of course, when you're shooting large format and you're shooting wide angle, you have a lot of information because the set is so beautiful. Kate's costumes is amazing, and everything is very organic. And we really like to see that as much as we could. And to move the camera again is a storytelling on a dramatic way. but we don't want to go into like craziness, like, I'm Cuba or whatever, where the camera's floating around. But it's
mission accomplished. You never went there.
Yeah. No, but I love that movie. That's another thing. But
I love it too.
And again, when you're in there, I just think it's much more dramatic. As an audience, when you see a movie that's shot wide angle and you're in there, it's so. I think it's much more dramatic storytelling. And, about the details, we want to see as much as set, because the set is beautiful. We want to see the costumes, and we're not afraid of the darkness. The key light is like nice and strong, but we really like when things are going to black.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot of times where, things were kind of heavily side or backlit, and, what was right in front of the camera went fully dark, and it was gorgeous.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, that's the intention. We really like to be in the dark side of the light.
I so enjoyed seeing it on a big screen.
Yeah,
I mean, I really did. I know it's got released in about 1,000 screens, and people in most major cities are getting chances to see it that way. I'm just curious. Were you privy at all to the discussions? Because I'd heard like a couple of months ago it was going to be a very limited release, and then it seemed like
I originally heard that it was just going to go straight to Netflix, and I was like, what?
Yeah, and I don't know anything about that. Of course, I'm super happy about they're releasing that in IMAX as well. We shot in digital, but they're making IMAX copies, and they're making 35 millimeters copies. And I think it's really cool. Of course, these kind of movies should be seen in the cinema. And it seems like, I don't know how big releases in cinema, but it seems to be pretty big.
It's 1,000 screens, and my theater last night was completely sold out. Yeah,
mine was. I got the last seat in my theater when I went to see it at the Laemmle in North Hollywood.
But that is fantastic, isn't it? It's really, really cool, and the movie is not even come out yet. It's great. I think it seems to be a movie everybody likes to go in and look at, and I think that release on IMAX is pretty cool.
But I assume when you guys were making it, you knew, it was financed by Netflix, so it's designed for the small screen, or people have pretty nice sized screens at their homes right now.
But it seems like screens back home is getting better and better, isn't it?
For sure. But like, were there any considerations, thoughts, approaches that you took specifically because you knew that it was going to, the widest release it was going to get was going to be on Netflix?
No. We shot it as good as we could.
Mm-hmm.
We shot it like it was going to be released on a good quality cinema. And of course, then you're going to see it on the big screen back home, and some people are going to see it on the iPhone or whatever the phone they have. And
yeah,
it's just the world right now. But of course, we are making movies for the cinema, and for the television back home. But I'm just saying we do it as good as we can. And that is like, especially this movie, because everything is done for real, as I said earlier, no green screen, of course, a lot of visual effects cleanups, and a lot of stuff is done digital, but we shot it as good as we could. All the set is built, ships is built, the light is nice, and the costume is made amazing. So, we just going for the best quality we could do.
Can we talk a little bit about the grade? Because, I feel like, you shot it beautifully, and then the grade, and this is something I've noticed in a lot of Guillermo's movies, especially the stuff you do with him. You kind of find kind of a mythical fairy tale, like it's a little heightened from the grade. Now, how much of that is from the shoot and how much of that is from the grade? It feels like the colors are like really popping, but there's like a real separation in the way that the colors look and everything like that. How much work do you guys put into that? It feels really, really well thought out.
Everything we're doing as good as we can, But our dailies, I'm not making a film loot. I'm going in. Every scene is a special scene for me. I'm just shooting the movie like I shot on film. So if I want to change the color, I'm changing the color, putting gels on, or changing it on LED lights. But our dailies and the final movie is exactly the same. We're not
really
100%. We are not, when we are coming into the DR, of course, we are cleaning it up and we are making power windows and stuff, but the color palette is exactly the same. And that's because the whole color palette of the movie. You can say the lights, you can say the costumes, especially the costumes, the hair and makeup, and the set design is so specific, So if we change everything in post, in the DI, the whole color palette will slide to one of the sides. So we never do that.
But do you take it further though? Like do you push it further in the
Not
idea?
really, because we're saturating pretty much. I'm just saying, if you have a frame grab from the dailies and you have a frame grab from the final movie, it's going to be more or less 1-to-1.
Wow.
So of course, power windows and stuff like that, we cannot do that on the set. And sometimes, especially the way you're shooting now, it's easier to flag something off in the DI instead of spend a half an hour to get in with a crane and blah blah blah. To take a corner to sit down, so we do that of course in post. But the color palette and the darkness, the exposure, and everything is like 1-to-1.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I mean, because
we are very old-fashioned that way.
Well, I mean, it's not about being old-fashioned, because I feel like it can go a different way, and we've all seen the movies that feel kind of overcooked in the grade.
Yeah,
and it doesn't feel.
We don't do that.
It doesn't feel that way, but it's got there's just such a, I don't know. I mean, it's just maybe the combo of you and Guillermo. Just like there's just something so mythical and magical about the color, and I guess when you're talking about the filters behind the lenses and all that stuff like that, that also lends to it as well. But there's just something so distinct and specific. I could look at one frame of this and tell, and I out of context and be like, that's a Guillermo del Toro movie shot by Dan Laustsen. I mean, it looks like.
But again,
work.
I think the color is very important. It's a little bit like the old days when you shot on film, because you have to control the exposure in the colors. The steel blue is changing a lot if it's getting too bright or too dark. So the color palette is very sensitive for exposure. And that's, we're looking very much into that, of course, when you're shooting.
Do you find that the modern cameras give you more flexibility with that, or is it about the same?
No, I think the whole thing, when you're doing, there's nothing comparing to shoot on film in the old days.
Yeah.
I know people are shooting on film now, but they're still going into telecine and color correction and blah, blah, blah. But when you shot on film, you could do it a little bit warmer, you could do it colder, you could make it darker or brighter.
Yeah.
But now you can do everything, there's no limits, and of course that's fantastic. But you just have to be sure you're not getting lost in translation, because there's a million things you can do, and I think that's a problem as a modern cinematographer and a director as well. You have to follow your heart and your style and your instincts, because there's a million ways to do everything. And of course, it's I think that the way the digital world has come into our world is great, because you can do much more.
But do you kind of self-imposed guardrails around the 8 billion choices that you have, and say, okay, we're gonna rein ourselves into this dynamic range, and we're gonna rein ourselves into I know we've talked about the color palette, but like, here's how we're gonna do the color palette. Here's how we're gonna expose those colors. Like, how much thought goes into that before you're on set doing it?
I just think, I have my style and I have the way I'm thinking, and I'm working together with a bunch of really good people. It's not like, I don't think I have rules about we cannot do that or we cannot do that. We just, when we are shooting, we have a very strong idea what we like and doesn't like. So it's not like, we cannot do that because we're not allowed still to do that. We're going to have all the help we can get in the technical world as well. But it's not like, I think to get lost in that world is very easy. But we try to stay on the track there, stay on the thin red line. And again, Guillermo and me is talking about it all the time, of course, and you have good quality monitors, so you can see that. In the old days, I was looking into eyepiece. But again, think about how many really cool movies have been done on film without any CT or anything, And I did a lot of them in the old days as well. And I think it's just another way to do, because if you look at movies like Apocalypse Now, for example.
Oh my God.
that's shot without any CG, just like a bunch of really fantastic director and DPs, and it's just craftsmanship. And we try to stay on that line, and still, Guillermo and me, we don't want to, as I said, if we want to change the color, we are changing the color as we did in the old days with the filter in front of the light, because we're using a lot of 20Ks and Dinos and Raptors and all this kind of old lights. And of course we use LED lights as well. There's no doubt about that. But the big lights outside the windows is everything tungsten. And, we are gelling them like we did in the old days. And I think you can see that.
I want to jump in here just real quick. Talking about the old days, talking about the way things used to be, and certainly, Dan, the trajectory of your career, the budgets keep going up, the projects get bigger. You're working in the largest format that you can right now. But do you ever want to go back? Do you ever want to go back to indie? Do you ever want to go back to very small single camera, small sources, contained story? Do you ever feel like the need, I'd like to it's a different muscle. It's a different muscle to exercise with the small crew and the small camera and to run around and to do this stuff. Tell me, are you like, those days are done, I never want to do that again? Or do you sometimes get the itch that you'd like to do something like that?
I don't know. First of all, this movie is shot with one camera as well. This is a single camera. Frankenstein is shot with one camera. But again, I think it's hard to discuss how it was in the old days, because everything was, I think the way we shot movies in the old days, and I'm from Denmark, from Europe, where everything was much smaller, much like, the first movie I did was, the camera department was 2 people. It was me as a DP, operator, and they have a focus puller. That was the camera department. And of course not, but again, depends on the story. I think there's some beauty thing about when you can do a very small crew for a longer period. It could be, it depends on the story. Because think about Kubrick, what he did. He have a very, very small crew, but he shot for 200 days or whatever.
No thanks.
And of course that's beauty.
Yeah,
depends on the story. Going back to smaller budget just because you want to go smaller budget, it depends on the story. Again, you see some really cool smaller, remember that movie called Ida, the Polish one, the black and white?
I vaguely remember it, but I never got to see it.
Yeah, but it's a very, very beautiful black and white. It's a very static, everything is static, and some really fantastic framings, and I'm sure that's a super low budget movie, but it looks amazing, and the story is very, very simple and beautiful. Stuff like that it's of course, but you cannot do a big action movie with a very small crew, because then it's going to take forever. And I'm not missing the old days. I'm just saying that's another way to do it. It's not because right now we are living in a world where everything is changing, and I think I'm so lucky I'm working together with some fantastic directors, and I'm very, very pleased about that. And I have an extremely good crew around me, and everybody wants to do the best we can. So it's not I wish we was back in the old days where we have to. It's not like that. Just some. I think some of those movies, we talked about Lawrence of Arabia. Those big classic movies where they shot everything in film, and it was just. You just knew exactly what you want to do. And that's what we're trying to do with Guillermo, because we really like to be precise and just tell the story the way we should tell it.
His films are they're just a genre in and of themselves, which is why I'm so glad you guys tackled Frankenstein. I really only have one other question, but it's maybe a big one. And that's spoiler alert. We bring a creature to life in this movie, and there's a giant tradition going back to the James Whale films, and in the book there isn't really a description of how we bring the creature back to life. It's maybe described vaguely as some kind of a chemical process, but the movies have made it very big and cinematic and involving lightning. How did you create this just amazing the sequence where we bring the creature to life?
That was when I read the screenplay, that was the only scene I was really afraid of, because It was because the lab is really, really big, and it's beautiful designed and built, and it was just, how are you doing that, in a period movie? We was just like, how crazy could we go and how dramatic could we go? And then we have a lot of discussions. We just want to do it very dramatic. We want to move the light a lot, and we like to, the scene is starting with the sunset. The scene is starting with the sun is disappearing, the storm is coming.
Yeah, light is like a character in this scene. Light is a huge character.
But I think that's a huge character in the whole movie, but especially this scene, of course.
Yeah.
And then, again, we are not afraid of the darkness. The batteries are changing color. We're changing smoke from steam. And it's getting very, very moody. And the lighting strikes is getting the key light for the whole scene. And again, the moving camera is a lot, but we move the camera a lot. But that was like, we just want to do it very scary and very beautiful at the same time. And I think that works pretty well.
For sure.
Yeah, I know. It's just amazing work. I think that this might be my favorite adaptation of Frankenstein out of all of them. I mean, like, you can't wash the James Whale versions out of your head. They're kind of imprinted on the culture. And,
okay.
And they're amazing. But I feel like this is, I don't know. I mean, like, I just kind of walked out. This always happens to me, though, whenever I walk out of a Guillermo del Toro movie. I feel like I'm still in it. Maybe it's the lens you were using. I'm
telling like, those wide angle lenses, they're beautiful on the large format. It's just beautiful. I love it.
I felt the same way, Ben. As soon as I walked out of that movie, I was like, I think this is my favorite version of this movie. I think so. You guys really, you set a high bar for yourself, but really pulled it off. It's really, and that whole sequence, the whole coming to life sequence, it's like, there's a couple of things you expect when you're going into a Frankenstein movie. You're expecting, like, the birth of the monster. You're also might be expecting maybe like pitchforks and villagers or flames. And I missed none of that and felt like every single bit of this story about redemption and about forgiveness, it plays out so incredibly well. And it just sort of like resonates today that, how important kindness really is in the world, how important kindness really is between people, and how dramatic that can be, which is fantastic.
And I think that's the way that's really important for him, and it's important for everybody. I think, like, love and forgiveness is really very strong things in the movie, in the world. And I think especially the way the world is right now, we really have to think about that. And I don't want to go into like too philosophical, but I just think for me, it's not a horror movie at all. It's a love story. And there's a lot of love stories in the movie, but it's like the father-son love story. It's very, very strong.
Agreed. It's the core. It's the central story, and it's great.
All right. Well, I think that's a wonderful place to leave it. Dan, if obviously we want people to go see this in the theater if it is still available when our episode drops, and if not, it will be on Netflix. What is it? I think it's November 7th. Yeah. So
go to see it in the theater as soon as you can.
I want to go see it again in the theater, honestly.
Okay.
But is there any other place where people can see your work, interact with you, besides seeing your amazing body of work, which I'm positive all of our listeners are very familiar with?
Yeah, the platforms, a lot of movies I've done is on platforms everywhere, but
I think you do a little Instagram. You do a little bit of that.
Yeah, I have Instagram. Yeah. People can follow me on Instagram. You can put that up, of course. That's cool. I think Instagram is nice, and it's just to show some what you have done and be proud of that, because I'm proud of what I'm doing.
Well, great. Well, Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show and for coming back. And we always love having you.
Yeah, same. Thank you very much.
All right, that was Dan Laustsen. Dan, thank you so much for being on the show. Great work with Frankenstein, and I'm looking forward to see what you do next.
Kick all the ass. I mean, does he realize that he's united you and I in liking one movie? That never happens.
It's rare.
I mean, it happened with Weapons. It's happened a few times.
It's happened with Weapons. It's happened with Silence of the Lambs. It's happened with Miller's Crossing, it happens.
Yeah. There's a handful, but like, I mean, for both of us to go see what is ostensibly, I don't know, it's hard to call it a horror movie, but it definitely has horror elements.
For sure.
And for you and I to both love it as unconditionally as we love Frankenstein, it's a big deal for us.
Definitely. All right, Ben.
Not necessarily for the world at large. Anyway.
It is bill paying time. We have to thank our fine friends over at Laowa, makers of incredible lenses. They're over at lawacine.com, and that is their sort of website collection page where you can see all of the different cine lenses that Laowa makes. I want to draw particular attention to their Super 35 Ranger zoom lenses. They're compact. They're very aggressively priced. They're about $2,000 for a lens. And I was involved in a pretty large lens test, which I'll talk more about a little bit later in the show. But
a large test or a test of large lenses?
A large lens test, meaning there was 39 different lenses that were tested in a very scientific manner. And I gotta say, super impressed with Laowa. Super impressed at many of the lenses I saw in the test, but I was seeing performance. Granted, it's a little bit slower lens at a 2.9 compared to like a prime lens, but I was seeing very prime-like performance out of zoom lenses, which is really impressive, especially at a lens that is so inexpensive. So I kind of just wanted to shout out the Ranger Super 35 lenses, because really good stuff, and really affordable price. And there are people out there who often they go like, I have to get primes, I have to spend a lot of money, I have to get a bunch of primes because I need a bunch of focal lengths. But when you invest in zoom lenses, you get a lot of focal lengths, and you don't have to buy as many lenses. So definitely for the people out there who are more indie filmmaker minded, who are looking for a affordable introductory to cinema lenses and maybe want a bunch of options and can live with a T29 sort of speed, definitely take a look at the Rangers. And if you're working in a Super 35 format, no reason to turn up your nose and say, I have to get the full frame versions. The Super 35 ones are so small, so light, and really high quality. And of course, you can get them over at Hot Rod Cameras, hotrodcameras.com. But also check out a little bit later in the show, for my short end, I'm going to talk about where you can see some of these cool tests.
Oh, excellent.
And now, short ends.
All right, so Ben, it is now short ends. It is our time right now. I can roll straight into it, but I usually give you the honors of first time up. So what's your short end this week?
It was a video that I stumbled across on YouTube about a new camera, or a new-ish camera, called the Kyra, formerly known as the Alice. Kyra, there's a couple of cameras that when I went to Google it came up. So just to be clear, it's Caira. And Kyra is a micro four thirds camera that instead of having a viewfinder of any kind, it has a MagSafe and it connects to your phone, to your iPhone. And so you control it with the iPhone. And I thought, oh, that's cool. I'm not the world's biggest fan of micro four thirds as a format because I like a larger sensor personally for most of the stuff I do. But whatever, I was like looking at it. But the thing about it was that it's got built-in generative AI. So you're taking pictures with generative AI, basically on the fly. You're taking a picture, and so it's like I'm taking a picture of you, and I'm like, I wish Ilya was wearing a tuxedo, and the picture will be with you wearing a tuxedo. It's using, I believe, Nano Banana as the model, but I could be wrong about which model it's using. And I look at that, and I'm like, on the one hand, cool. On the other hand, is this photography anymore? What the fuck are we doing? But yeah, I'm curious what you think about it, because when we were talking about it earlier, you knew about this camera, and I'm just curious, like, what's the point of photography? I mean, if we have Photoshop with generative fill anyway, you can do that stuff in Photoshop. Why would you want to bake that into your photo from the jump? And do you think this is a successful product? Because, by the way, this is Kickstarter funded, so this is kind of a new product.
Yeah, I'm a little familiar with this, and I got to say that I am extremely pessimistic because, first of all, it's like $700 or something like that. I think even at the Kickstarter price, it's about $700 for this camera. But you don't actually get to use it unless you also have an iPhone. So if you've got the latest iPhone, that's like, what, $1,500 or something like that. So you're a $2,000+ camera.
Yeah, but you're not getting the phone just to take pictures. You probably already have the phone.
Not if you're an Android person. Not if you're if you don't have a compatible iPhone, then it's not going to work. So
all of us iPhone users already know Android people aren't real people. So
there's a hell of a lot more Android people than iPhone people, though. I'll have you know. So
right.
Okay, so here's the point, though. You have to have these two things together, and then in the Kickstarter ad, like the first sort of like quote from someone they have is a online influencer type of person from YouTube, and the call out quote they have is, "It's a camera designed for creators. It's a camera for people who don't want to read the manual for the camera." That doesn't tell me anything good, really. It's like the idea is like, oh, it's a point and click type of solution. There's already a lot of point and click solutions, and you can get a way better, just like a way better camera if you factor in $700 plus $1,500, $2,000, you can get yourself an incredible camera that has an incredible auto mode that I assure you, if you didn't read the manual, you could still just basically turn it on, hit the button, and take a picture. So to me, their entire conceit, that what they're trying to say is like, oh, we're AI native and you don't have to read the manual. To me, slapping a phone on the back, magneting.
I do think it's kind of smart to be like, hey, you can use your phone as a viewfinder for the camera. I mean, honestly, that's what the DJI micro or mini, the pocket camera does. Like, it gives you a way to use your phone as the viewfinder because, hey, you're walking around with a 4K monitor in your pocket all the time.
I just don't think that what it gives you, is really what people want who want to take good quality photos. And I think that having to say that you need to use AI and your phone involved here to do this, maybe there are people out there who want it. Maybe it's a thing. I think the Kickstarter thing, look, they had 206 backers. Currently, there's 26 days left to go. They've raised $150K. I mean, clearly their goal was only 20,000, so they've met their goal. But does this set the world on fire? Does this change what people want to do? I don't think that their pitch video is particularly compelling. So I don't know. I think it's kind of a. Well,
I mean, and I guess it's already out in the world if people are reviewing it on some level. I mean, I kind of look at it and I'm just like, do I want to bake? I mean, when you have all the digital tools that you have in post, do you want to bake these AI things into the source image, or would you rather go sit down in an air-conditioned room on your laptop or computer or iPad or whatever you're using and do the editing there later, as opposed to you're on the fly, if you're doing wedding photography, these are moments that are only going to happen once ever in somebody's life. Are you wanting to make them into lies on the spot? I guess I would rather like have the residue of the true thing that happened in the real world than make a lie out of it. And I don't see the benefit to doing it in camera versus
I really don't either.
Doing it if you're doing a fiction project and you want to build your artificial world, no one's stopping you. You can still do that.
I don't see a huge value of this. $1,000 to use your other $1,000 item to take worse pictures than you could just do with a Sony or a Nikon or a Panasonic or Fuji or any of the other, Canon, any of these other companies out there. They all make really incredible $2,000 full frame cameras that you can, take amazing pictures. So it's like, yeah, I failed to see that.
Well, you've talked me out of it. Now I'm not going to buy one. I wasn't going to buy one. Anyway, Ilya, what is your obsession this week?
All right, so I alluded to a test with a bunch of lenses just a few moments ago when we were yakking about Laowa. A couple months ago at Hot Rod Cameras, the Cinematographer's mailing list, which I've mentioned on the show before.
My God, I didn't realize they're still around. They've been around for like 30 years.
Yes.
They've been around as long as email.
And they're still around. They own the URL cinematography.net. So very easy to find them online. You can go there and you can see the 2025 affordable lens test, which Hot Rod Cameras hosted. A bunch of different companies all got together and sent their lenses under $5,000 for primes and under $6,000 for zooms. And you might immediately think, wait, this doesn't sound very affordable. This is incredibly affordable when you're talking about cine lenses. So a sub $5,000 prime is like a ton.
Yeah, I'm used to a cine lens being $25,000.
Exactly right. So we were basically only had a couple of requirements. The one requirement was that it is a cine lens, and two, that we could get it onto the Blackmagic 17K, which is what we were using to shoot this test. The Blackmagic 17K is a 65 millimeter size sensor, and what's great about that is we could put these lenses on, even the ones that weren't designed to cover such a large sensor, and then we could show people exactly how large of an image circle or how much coverage a lens has. So we had lenses that were Super 35, lenses that were full frame, and lenses that were large format or 65 millimeter. And you can see precisely. Adam Wilt is the driving force behind this test at the CML. He is one of a cabal of a few people there who kind of run things, and he puts together these tests. And he did an amazing job in post-production, creating two versions of all of the lenses that we shot, including one that is the cropped extraction of the native format, so you can see exactly what the lens is supposed to be doing, but then also the full frame, the full sensor area with crop lines, so you can see how it covers. The CML test is live, currently over at cinematography.net, and there's a really useful tool that Adam put together, so you can compare any two lenses playing more or less the top and bottom side by side in a scenario where they have about the same pacing, and you can pause it so you can take a look and compare the two. But I think really the value is also going to the Vimeo links, where you can look at the full screen version of what that is. And we have all of these lenses, 39 different lenses, shot at their wide open aperture. So you get to see really all the characters of the lens, and then also stop down to a T4, which was the universal stop for all the lenses. Not only are there spherical lenses and anamorphic lenses, but zoom lenses all come into this mix. And that's where I was mentioning Laowa before. I was really impressed at how great the Laowa lenses, the zoom lenses, looked compared to primes. And really, some fantastic surprises, certainly in the flare. There is a whole section of the test where you get to see the flare of the lenses. Some lenses are, I think, exactly as you would expect, and then others are quite surprising. One of the things that I think was really helpful for this test was the uses of points of reference. So there is an Airy Zeiss Master Prime and an Airy Zeiss Master Anamorphic. And those are sort of like the palette cleansers. They go through exactly the same test, as I said, about as scientifically as possible. That we've tried to minimize all the variables so you can really see the differences. And both of those lenses are now discontinued, but they still make great images. And just for anyone out there who's unaware, I think around the $40,000 range, something like that, when the anamorphics came out, for sure, and I think around the $25,000 range when the original Master Primes came out. So these are really, really expensive lenses, exactly as you were talking about, exactly as you were thinking of, like, oh, this is the what cinema lenses cost. What is happening now at the sub $5,000 level, and some of these lenses are like $1,000, $1,200. It's really impressive. Some really, really amazing quality is happening out there. And the CML test, without any biases or judgments or endorsements, puts forth a fantastic way for you to look at these things and make your own mind. I'm going to do some further commentary and follow up myself, and I'll post it to the Hot Rod Cameras YouTube channel. But really, this is an excellent resource for someone who is considering lenses or just wants to see various points of reference that are accurate, and really take full advantage of that pause button, open up another screen, load another video, and be able to look at them side by side. It's fantastic.
That's cool. That's really cool. I will definitely check that out. By the way, I wanted to give a shout out to the video that I saw about the Kyra camera. It was from Micro 4 Nerds. That's the YouTube channel, and it's called the AI Camera of Your Dreams and Your Nightmares.
Nice. We'll put a link to that in the show notes over at camnoir.com.
All right, buddy. So that about does it. Who do we need to thank this week as opposed to all other weeks?
Let's start off by thanking Kays Alatracci. Kays, who I haven't seen in a while, but I think you saw recently. I think you went to a movie with Kays. So
yeah, we went to a screening for the podcast together just the other night.
That's exciting. Kays, who made all the music that you heard on this show. And then we also have to thank Alana Cody, who is our producer, our fearless producer, who is also now our editor and is slicing, dicing, chopping, and making thousands of julienne fries out of this show. And we have to thank her. So Ben, if we've thanked everyone, where can people find you? Where can people track you down?
You can find me at benrock.com. How about yourself? Where can people find you?
You can find me over at Hot Red Cameras, the sponsor of the show, hotredcameras.com, or over at LinkedIn or Instagram. I still get the occasional connections from those places. So, Ben, you want to take us out?
Thanks for tuning in.
Well done.
This has been the Cinematography Podcast, presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory on the web at hotrodcameras.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our show on iTunes and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.